Hello, I'm Shane M. Nygaard, and welcome to the 10th house, Showdown at High Noon. Reflections on High Noon Light. This is a Mythic Currents video exploring the 10th house in astrology through its time of day and quality of light. The 10th house is the house of visibility, but not merely visibility as popularity, exposure, or reputation. It is visibility as revelation. It is the place in the chart where the sun stands highest, where shadows grow their thinnest, where what has been built must stand in the light. If we imagine the 12 astrological houses as a full day of consciousness, beginning with the ascendant at sunrise, then the 10th house belongs to the hours approaching noon. This is not the gentle light of dawn, nor the dream thick darkness of midnight. This is the height of day. This is high noon. And at high noon, all is revealed. There is a moment in the day when the light ceases to be tender. It no longer stretches across the horizon. It no longer filters itself through mist or mystery. It does not suggest. It declares. This is the image of the 10th house. Astrologically, the 10th house is associated with the midheaven, the most elevated region of the chart. It is where we encounter public life, reputation, career, vocation, achievement, authority, and consequence. But symbolically, it is something even more precise. It is the place where one becomes visible in the eyes of the world. The 10th house is not only where we are seen, it is where we are tested by being seen. So, stepping back a moment, one way to understand the astrological houses is to imagine them as a full day of consciousness. The ascendant begins at sunrise, when what was hidden by darkness is revealed. The MC, the midheaven, takes us up to high noon, which we're talking about now. The descendant is sunset, when the shadows stretch out and are at their longest. And the IC takes us down into midnight, where we encounter roots, ancestry, where we have privacy and the hidden foundations of life. But back at the midheaven, the 10th house, this brings us upward. It takes us toward the place of culmination and exposure and public form. Here, life rises into full visibility. This is why the 10th house cannot be reduced to just career, though career may be one of its expressions. It is the place where the private life begins to become legible in public form. It is where inner potential must find architecture. It is where the soul steps into daylight and asks, what can be seen of me now? Carl Jung urges us to stick with the image, and astrology rewards that discipline. The chart is not built only from abstract concepts. It is built from images, a horizon, a summit, a descent, hidden areas, a blaze of noon. So if we stick with the image of the 10th house, we must stay with its brilliant light. Not simply ambition, not simply success, not simply career, but a particular quality of illumination. The 10th house is the light that clarifies. It exposes outlines. It demands coherence. And it brings the psyche into relation with public reality. And under such light, the question is not only, what do you do? But what can your life reveal when it is seen clearly in broad daylight? The 10th house is Apollonian in the deepest sense, lucid, measured, elevated, and orderly. This is the house of perspective. From here, one sees broadly, one sees from above, and with the long gaze that surveys the terrain. This is not the intimacy of twilight or the mystery of midnight. It is the clean architecture of what we could describe as reality under full exposure. The 10th house wants evidence, it wants coherence, and it wants things to stand where they are and be named for what they are. In this way, it is not only the house of recognition, it is the house of reality testing. Can the form hold? Can the work stand? Can the name endure? Can the vocation survive the light? When I think of the 10th house, I think of huge windows. There's a line from the TV series NCIS, spoken by Mossad director Orly Elbaz as she stands before a wall of windowed glass, looking out. She says, "These windows were installed at the request of my predecessor. He believed that with light comes clarity." That is an almost perfect 10th house sentence. The windows do not create truth, but they make truth easier to perceive. They do not invent the landscape, they reveal it. This is the work of the 10th house, to increase visibility, widen perspective, and reduce distortion by exposing things to the clean discipline of light. At its best, the 10th house does not seek visibility for vanity's sake. It seeks visibility because reality requires it. Leadership requires it. Accountability requires it. Vocation, yep, requires it. So, to answer a calling in public life, for example, is in some sense to consent to illumination. This is one of the deepest spiritual pressures of the 10th house. It asks something more difficult than mere achievement. It asks for alignment between public form and inner truth. A person may want recognition, but the 10th house asks recognition for what? A person may want success, but the 10th house asks success in service of what purpose? A person may rise into public view, but the 10th house asks, can you remain coherent once the light reaches you? This is where vocation differs from mere ambition. Ambition wants to rise. Vocation wants to answer. And yet the 10th house is not only windows and clarity. It also carries drama, hence our title. Showdown at High Noon is such an apt title, though strange. It's an apt title because high noon is never merely scenic. It belongs to the Western duel, the moment when two figures step into open space and all concealment has ended. No hedges, no corners, no protective dusk, no advantage of angle, only direct, merciless light. This is why image matters. The 10th house is not simply brightness, it is impartial brightness. It creates an equal field of exposure. In such light, no one can hide behind obscurity. What stands, stands. What fails, fails. What is real must be able to face the day. In Madeline Miller's modern telling of the Circe myth, Circe observes, she says, Odysseus had told me once, half of a duel is maneuvering around the sun, trying to get the light to stab at your enemy's eyes. That is brilliant, but at high noon, when the sun stands directly overhead, both parties, that tactic loses its force. No one owns the angle. No one steals advantage from the light. The light belongs equally to all. This gives the 10th house such nobility. It is the house of public reality. It is the house of what can be witnessed. It is the house of consequence. It reveals without favoritism. And this is what makes the 10th house so demanding. It asks whether our structures, our choices, our ambitions, and our public name can survive an equal field of exposure. This is why the 10th house has so much to do with recognition, career, reputation, and vocation. See, a job may sustain us, and a career begins to gather shape and direction and effort into something more visible and sustained. But vocation reaches deeper. Vocation asks how one's life, taken as a whole, answers a call. It asks not only what one does, but what does one stand for under the brilliant conditions of being seen? There is discipline implied here. Order matters in the 10th house because clarity requires form. To become visible in any lasting sense, one must have structure. One must be able to stand in the field of light without dissolving. The 10th house is not simply the desire to rise, it is the capacity to hold one's shape at the height. The 10th house is also connected to the architecture of the body, to the muscular and skeletal system, to support, alignment, uprightness, and public hearing. This is not incidental, it is symbolic precision. To stand in daylight, something must hold us up. To bear visibility, we need form. To answer vocation, we need structure strong enough to sustain the weight of being seen. The skeleton is not decorative. It is what allows the body to rise. Likewise, the 10th house asks for the inner skeleton of a life, discipline, coherence, responsibility, and form. Without structure, visibility becomes exposure without purpose. With structure, visibility becomes presence. So now let's look at a couple of chart examples to see how the brilliance of high noon and the 10th house show up in life. Journalist Ronan Farrow gives us a striking example of the 10th house as revelation. Just look at that 10th house. With Sun, Mercury, Moon, Saturn, and Uranus in Sagittarius in the 10th house, the symbolism is almost startling. Sagittarius extends the range. The 10th house supplies the attitude and the light. Together, they describe a public vocation shaped around truth, exposure, investigation, and far-reaching consequence. Pharaoh's work brings us into a landscape of paper trails, cover-ups, secret recordings, intimidation, surveillance, and shadow networks. Powerful figures attempt to bury truth, yet a strongly lit 10th house does not leave buried things in peace. It keeps looking until the pattern becomes visible, until the truth is in broad daylight. The high noon metaphor fits beautifully here. Pharaoh's work did not create wrongdoing, it exposed it. It brought the hidden into the open field of collective sight, where shadow could no longer protect it. And I love this post from Pharaoh, his New Year's resolution, 7680 by 4320. Resolution indeed. Could it be any clearer? I think not. The 10th house wants the picture clearer. It wants reality in the highest definition. It wants fewer distortions, fewer blind spots, fewer convenient shadows. So, in this sense, Pharaoh's example does not only show the 10th house as public visibility, it shows the 10th house as moral visibility, the insistence that what affects the public must eventually answer to the public eye. And if Pharaoh shows us the 10th house as exposure and revelation, Russian chess grandmaster Anatoly Karpov shows us its elegance in another register: order, strategy, discipline, and the calm command of visible structure. Chess itself is a profoundly 10th house image. Everything is visible, nothing is hidden. The field is ordered, bounded, geometric. Meaning arises not from chaos, but from relation, pattern, foresight, and consequence. With Sun, Mars, and Mercury in his 10th house, Karpov embodies the elevated mind that sees the whole board. This is another form of high noon. Two opponents facing off against one another in full visibility. Every move is exposed. Every error is illuminated. Every strategy unfolds under shared rules. Public excellence requires judgment. It requires structure that can hold. So, what does the 10th house ask of us? It asks whether we can bear visibility without distortion, whether we can cultivate clarity rather than confusion, whether we can build a life that stands upright in daylight, whether our actions, ambitions, name, and work can withstand the slimmest of shadows. The 10th house is not simply success, it is revelation through structure. It is the long labor of becoming visible. It is the soul's high noon, the hour when one's life steps furthest into the open, and the world can see what has been built. At high noon, the sun is not sentimental. It does not flatter. It does not blur. It reveals. And perhaps that is why the 10th house remains so compelling. In a world of smoke, spin, and shadow, it stands for something austere and necessary. Visibility joined to truth, order joined to purpose, recognition joined to reality. All is revealed at high noon. The question is whether we are ready to be seen there. Thank you for watching. May the 10th house remind us that visibility is not merely the desire to be seen, but the courage to stand clearly in the light with purpose, structure, and a vocation strong enough to withstand high noon. For additional mythopoetic astrological content, visit my Substack, Mythic Currents, at mythiccurrents.substack.com.